Welcome to the Stoppage Time edition of the Pitch to Pro podcast. This is a highlight reel of some of the best moments from the show so far, and every other week we will be bringing you a special 5 to 7 minute segment featuring the best stories, tales, and moments of the podcast. And so that leads nicely into, I think, what is going to be the largest single question and decision that is going to come out of this, which is if it happens, right? Again, caveat, if the vote happens the way that we think it will and people are talking about it, but there's still a chance it won't. Should I, as a parent or as a club, allow teams to keep their current rosters and play up with a good chunk of their team? Or as a parent, should I fight to keep my player on their current team and roster and play up if they fall into that August 1st through December 31st? So this is going back to now, the should I play up conversation is not unique in the school age year. You have this conversation with I don't know how many players
all the time
and parents all the time already in the birth year.
Yeah,
it happens. It's now going to happen a lot more because of this shift that is going to happen. But once that shift happens, now you're back to, the cadence at least, or frequency of it is now. But you're going to have it a lot more in this upcoming year if you are a coach, a parent, a player, a club director, whatever the case may be. But I would love your thoughts as someone that has been in and around the game and had this conversation I don't know how many times at this point. But go ahead and dive into the trap that is, should my player play up?
Yeah. I think the first thing would be if we can kind of remove the glorification of that concept, because it really tends to be a parent-driven concept, right? Like the parents love the idea of their kid playing up, and most kids don't really care. They just want to play. They want to play with their friends. They want to play whatever. And I very rarely have heard a 9-year-old kid like, I think playing with older kids is going to be better for my development. We don't hear that from those kids. They just want to be with their friends, and they want to play soccer, and they want to learn, and they want to compete at a level that's right, where maybe they're being pushed. No one likes to win every game by a bunch of goals. Nobody certainly wants to lose every game by a bunch of goals.
Yeah.
And so if we can get the right competitive level, if it's the right social environment, if it's super fun, then the ones who really want to push and get to that higher level, they're going to do it because of how much they love it, not because they're in the older age group and they're being pushed and maybe being terrified by older kids or whatever it is. It can actually hinder growth more than it helps in a lot of cases.
And I just want to reset for a second so that people understand what we mean by this is, even though you're shifting the registration deadlines and the definition of that, you could still, just like it is today, roster players that are younger than that cutoff line.
Yeah.
So in my instance, I have 6 players that are August 1st to December 31st in 2016. I could theoretically, talk in potentiality here, you could choose to make that still your roster going forward. That would still comply with the new school age grouping and those registration deadlines. What that would mean, though, is that you are going to have naturally a younger team, and in some cases, significantly younger.
17 months.
Up to 17 months. So I have a player that's born in December. They could be playing against a kid, a December 2017 kid under that scenario could be playing against a player that was born in August of 2015. Yeah. That's a 17-month gap that you are now potentially playing against. And so that is what we mean when I ask Scott, should I consider fighting to be, playing up or keeping on the same roster?
Yeah.
Or that's what we're talking about. And so I wanted to level set that because, and help people understand that is a potential that you might see, and that's a choice. I'm not, and then, dive back into should your play up. And I think you did a great job by calling out that a lot of the time the glorification of it, one, but then two, that a lot of the time it's driven by the parents.
Yeah.
So now talk, once we can move past that, talk a little about like developmentally. And, you may be an A squad player now if you were to still try to move up and play. But I think what, you and I have talked about, because we had this conversation with my son and Coach Chase.
Yeah.
Because he played up to start.
Yep.
In 4v4. But talk about development and what that does and how do we think about that as a coach and a player.
Yeah. So I think we have a very small percentage of kids who develop when they have to fight for their lives, right? And those do exist out there. There are those kids that when they have to fight for their lives, like they're going to find a way through it and they're going to develop. Most, I would say in my experience, most of the kids, and this is anecdotally, I don't have research on this.
Well, it's considerable experience.
Yeah.
To give you credit.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm sure there's research out there on this. My experience is that most kids develop when they're successful and and when they're enjoying it. And that's where confidence comes from. Right. And so I think we could look at a player and say, I might have a conversation with a parent that says, hey, we think the only way for my player to get better is going to be if he gets a chance to play up with either a stronger team in the age group or with an older team. And I might look at the same kid and watch them play and say, actually, what I think would be best is if they played on the lower team in our age group for a few games. Stay on your team, train with your team, whatever, but go get some game time with the team that's actually lower than your child's team. So if we have 3 teams in the age group, instead of moving from the second to the first, maybe play some games with the third. And let's just experience what it is to lead, to get confidence, to maybe play a different position because they're such a critical piece of the success for the team. Let them feel what it feels like to be the reason that the team won a game or had success or turned a game around or whatever that is. And let's see what that does to them. And my experience, and this is with my own kids, by the way, as players, and they love the game and they've played at all the different levels, but they still will point back to a season. My oldest will point back to a season where he spent the entire season playing with the weakest team probably in our entire club. Every single game he played with that team. Now he was on his same team, but he played every game with this other team as well, just to help them out. And he played as a center back when he's normally a striker or a winger. He played out of position. He had to talk. He had to communicate. He played with players who couldn't keep up. And he just exploded in confidence that season. And he exploded developmentally and socially and in leadership and in mentorship and saw the game differently.
Thank you for joining us for this Stoppage Time special of the Pitch to Pro podcast. If you've enjoyed the conversation, you can click watch the full episode here. Be sure to tune in next Thursday for a new episode of the Pitch to Pro podcast, the official podcast of Ozark United FC. Available on YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere you get your podcasts.